face is dropped on a new edition of Soccer Down here. It's a Monday. It's January 11th. Not quite midway through silly season, but we're getting there. Lots of things to get into. John is joining us from a new state. I don't think John has joined Soccer Down here from the state of Florida yet.
I'll take your word for it. So greetings from Florida for this week.
Where in Florida, so we can send people to go find you and heckle you?
St. George's Island. It is the 4-mile bridge that you take off of from East Point in Apalachicola. It is a turtle nature preserve, or a turtle preserve. And from like May until I want to say October at 9 o'clock at night, you're supposed to turn your lights off if you have a back porch that faces the beach to discourage turtles from coming onto the beach to do nesting. But right now we're okay. We just draw shades so the sun doesn't hit us at 6:30 in the morning.
All right. Excellent. We got a few things to get into today. There were a bunch of results from the weekend that we'll talk about. A lot of MLS updates on a variety of different things. We have some lower division reshuffling to get into with North Carolina FC moving to USL League One, and how they probably shouldn't be the only one who does this over the next couple of years, and maybe even this year. We'll have to wait and see what that looks like. Also, rumors, silly season, welcome. It's craziness. That's what we're doing. I will start with this one. Wanted to check in on the latest update on Moises Caicedo, see where things stand with him. First thing that pops up in my Twitter feed when I search for updates on Moises Caicedo, a headline from the Daily Star about the Manchester United side of it, which we know is done. He's not going to go to Manchester United. But the headline in the Daily Star is Man United's Moises Caicedo transfer stance explained after, quote, cluster F negotiations. And they did put 3 stars after the F, so, you get a sense of this. That's what we're going with here. They said negotiations were made overly complicated, which had been hinted at one point in the latest on this. There had been some rumors about multiple agents and things like that, which frankly isn't all that uncommon when it comes to South American players in general. I know there's more updates too. We'll get to that. We're starting here because it was a cluster F, according to the Daily Star. As had been reported, everybody thought he was going to Manchester United. £5 million was maybe a safe number to go with as a range or a ballpark figure for the transfer. That started, early December probably. Yeah. The claims of that being a done deal in South America at that time were obviously wide of the mark. The Manchester Evening News reported that there were various intermediaries, and they were told by a source that things got too messy, which made it just impossible to get a deal done. And this is, of course, the Manchester United story of things. Another source described it as being a cluster F. So, Manchester United not going to get Moises Caicedo. They are going to get Amad Diallo. That deal is done. Back to Caicedo, and our crack investigation team on the Discord has been in on this, and Ricky Ricardo shared a tweet from, let's see, this is from Andy is the Twitter name, a commentator on La Red Ecuador and Liga TV Oficial. And they said that Santiago Morales, who is the sports manager of Independiente del Valle, Moises Caicedo's club in Ecuador, said that everything is closed with a Premier League club for Moises Caicedo. Today he's getting the work visa, and that was tweeted a little over an hour ago. And between Wednesday or Thursday, they would announce it. I have to think all the signs still point to Brighton as the team that's going to get this done. They have purchased Ecuadorian players before. Now, it hasn't really worked out in that sense, but they do have some connections from that. So this is where we are. It looks like he's going to go to Brighton. I've said it before. I'll continue to say it. I don't know if that's the best move for his long-term development. Brighton's a club who is not exactly in a safe place when it comes to relegation in the Premier League, and I don't know how promising things look for them going forward. You know, you look at the table, they are 1 spot safe right now. They are 3 points safe. Fulham behind them has 2 games in hand, and they're 3 points back, so keep that in mind. Maybe they're not as safe as they appear. Burnley's 2 points ahead of them, but also has 2 games in hand. Newcastle, 5 points ahead of Brighton. They have a game in hand. So Brighton's not really in a good spot here. On points per game, they would be in a relegation spot. And, you know, you look at, okay, well, what's the schedule look like? And we can go through it, and it doesn't look good because Brighton's in 17th place. So they're not going to be favored against many of these teams. They go to Manchester City. They go to Leeds in their next 2 matches. They go to Manchester City on Wednesday. They go to Leeds on the weekend. That's not going to help them very much. The game for them that they're going to be pointing at is they've got to beat Fulham when they host the Cottagers on the 26th. That's it. They go to Burnley on February 6th. Around that, they play Tottenham and Liverpool. Again, not likely for any good results here. They've got to beat the teams around them. They've got 2 opportunities in the next month. If they don't, Moises Caicedo could be looking at championship football next season. And he'll be fine in the championship. He'll do well. But I just don't think it's the best move for him. There is a perception, and it is real because it's affecting moves out there, that going to England, going to Europe is the better move. It's the better move according to some people. I don't think that's the case across the board. I think if you compare Atlanta United to Brighton, you compare the transfers out from Atlanta United and from Brighton, you compare the environments that the player would be playing in between Brighton and Atlanta United, and yes, Premier League, but yes, you would expect this season to have, hopefully by the end of the year, 70,000 people at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Don't think Brighton's getting anything like that. There is a perception that affects these things. I do think it's changing, but I think this shows you that it's still real. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Looks like it's going to happen with Brighton for him, and we'll see if it works. For Ecuador fans, and I know El Mataflow's here, and I know others are here, you got to hope that it works, because this is a promising young player that you don't want to see their development get derailed by a bad move. We've seen it in the United States. We've seen players take that jump because they feel like they have to take that jump, and they go to a club that doesn't fit them. I mean, we can go from local players like a Zion Jones, who left Atlanta United's academy and went to Schalke to join their youth squads, did well but not well enough to earn a pro deal, and now he's bouncing around trying to find an opportunity. There's plenty, as Gwen's reminding us of, there's plenty of American players who have made those moves because they feel like they have to. It's not always the move that works out. We'll see if Brighton is that. I'm honestly disappointed, not for Atlanta United's sake. I'd love to see him here, but it's not going to happen, it appears. I'm disappointed for his sake and for Ecuador's sake because I don't think this is going to help him develop as a player. That's my hot take of the day.
And one of the concerns that I have is that let's assume that Brighton will be in a relegation battle. Mm-hmm. You bring in Moises Caicedo. If you're Graham Potter or whomever the manager is, will you be starting Caicedo, giving him regular minutes over players that have spent time in the Premier League, have spent time with Brighton, guys like Pascal Gross, Solly Marsh, Davy Proper, Sanders Elzate, etc.? Will you be starting him as opposed to those guys if you're in a relegation fight? And so for me, that's another question that I have out there is, would he even be getting regular minutes? You hope that he does because of his ability, and we know what his ability is. But is Graham Potter just going to revert to those guys who've been with him, that have been his guys over the last handful of years, if you're in a relegation battle?
And that's a really good point, because you look at who those guys are right now. And, you know, Brighton at the moment's playing a 3-5-2. You could play Caicedo in any of those 3 central midfield spots, depending on how you want to shape it. your last couple of games, it's been pretty consistent with who we've seen in those spots. And you're talking about, David Proper, a 29-year-old Dutch, player who's an experienced player. You've got Basuma, who's 24 from Mali, maybe a little less experienced because he's 24. Pascal Gross, you mentioned, 29 from Germany. Is he going to come in and play a 19-year-old Ecuadorian with no Premier League experience in these tough spots? Typically, managers don't. They should, because he's that good, and they should know what they're getting when they see him. If he doesn't adjust quickly, or if they just don't rate him the same way, or as we see sometimes, the club buys the player because they're looking at the potential, the manager doesn't want to work the player in right now because they're worried about staying up, it doesn't feel like a good fit. It does not feel like a good fit. Again, that's my opinion. Yes, I'm biased because Atlanta United is one of the clubs that was chasing him. Doesn't look like they're going to get him. But I don't think this is going to help him in the long run. I would not be surprised to see him move on from Brighton if they get relegated.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And I just have concerns over his development with the current state of affairs with Brighton in the table. And in these situations, if you're a manager, you're going to go with your guy.
Hold on 1 second. One thing that's going on in the debate here on the Twitch pitch, there's been nothing to say that the bids have been higher than Atlanta United's bid. Atlanta United's bid was the highest early on, and if it is still in that £5 to £6 million range, I don't believe that it's been higher. I don't think Brighton's going to end up paying more than Atlanta United offered. Atlanta United has to offer more, again, because of perception, but there's been no reporting that the bid was higher than the MLS bid. That was something that Morales said day one, that the MLS bid was the best bid financially. I don't think Brighton has come in with heavy bids. They're not a big spending club. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just emphasizing the point that, with everything that we see, with the evidence that we have put here with Brighton, with everything going on in their current dynamic, I'm afraid for the overall development and experience that someone like Moises Caicedo should be getting because of how talented he is, but he may not get because of the state of play that we see with Brighton.
We'll see. Not every European club's made the same, and that's something that I think people are going to have to start understanding. It is okay if you're in the United States to actually believe that a move to a MLS club is better. And that's something that I think American soccer fans and American soccer media is going to have to start embracing. If this was a move to Manchester United, obviously different conversation. If this was a move to a Chelsea or an Everton, all of those bring the question about playing time in. But if you're talking about a move to one of those clubs, no question. We understand that. If it's an Ajax, if it's a Milan, no question. We understand that. Brighton, I'm sorry, just because they have a Premier League name next to them, I don't think Brighton is this special beacon that should be, no question yet, they should go to Brighton. I disagree with that. I think we need to start expecting more. MLS clubs also have to work to change that perception internally as well. You've got to start winning CONCACAF Champions League. You've got to start making more noise. You've made a lot. You got to continue to make noise. You've got to continue to build. This shows you where it's at. If Brighton wins this one, okay, time to go back to work. And you keep working to change that perception. That's where it's at for me. We'll see. We'll see where that stands. That's the latest on Caicedo. Other transfer rumors that are out there before we jump into some MLS updates. Moussa Dembele from Lyon. It looks like he's going to head to Atleti really soon. Diego Simeone was asked about it. He said the deal's not done yet, but we're in advanced talks to sign him. Usually a manager's not going to say that unless that's accurate and it's pretty much a done deal. Paul Pogba's name has come up attached to PSG. I feel like it might be noise. It's talking about the summer, not for right now, which has been made pretty clear that he's not going anywhere in the January window. That one I want to see a little bit more on before I really buy into it. Could it happen? Sure. But PSG's got so many different names on the list right now, and they've got the money to spend. They can't get them all. It's just not going to fit. Where do they start prioritizing? We'll have to wait and see. Pogba's been linked with Juventus. He's been linked with Real Madrid as well as teams who want him. that summer window for him will get really, really interesting if PSG is in the mix there. Kieran Tierney from Arsenal looks like he could be headed to Napoli. They had chased him before, couldn't get the deal done. Scottish defender is a long-term target for Napoli now, according to the Telegraph. Harry Winks has been a little bit of an interesting situation. Everybody's been, I think, high on Harry Winks after he started to play a lot for Tottenham. That playing time has dissipated. Guillaume Balage reported today on Twitter that Valencia has made a second offer for Harry Winks. First one was rejected. They're willing to bring him in on loan, pay the whole of his wages. Spurs wants a large loan fee to get it done. And Guillaume said the player's stuck. He's not wanted by the manager, Jose Mourinho, and he can't leave. And those are tough spots for players. You know, I don't know what the resolution is going to be. Tottenham's going to have to accept an offer to let him go, or we'll see if he plays. We'll just have to wait and see how that one goes. A player that our friend Bernd has talked about quite a bit, and a player who has started to get a lot of attention in the Argentine national team, Nicolas Gonzalez from Stuttgart. He's starting to be talked about. He had a goal and an assist on the weekend in Stuttgart's win over Augsburg. He came from Argentinos Juniors in 2018, did really well helping them get back in promotion, extended his contract, so he's at Stuttgart for a long period of time under contract. Leeds has been linked with him. He's 22 also, by the way. Leeds has been linked with him. Tottenham has been linked with him. Juventus has been linked with him. It's starting to pick up a little bit. There's no release clause in his deal that took him to 2024. He earns about 1.5 million euro per year before tax plus bonuses. According to The Athletic, Stuttgart would be looking for a fee in the region of 30 million euro. My gut feeling is he goes this summer. I think if you're getting in that 30 million range, Stuttgart's going to have to make a sale. I know they'd love to keep him, but that might be hard to turn down. And at his age, I think he might want, especially if we're talking Spurs and Juve, things are picking up a little bit for Nico.
And since we're on Spurs for the moment, just before the show, we came on this morning. Spurs are now hosting Fulham on Wednesday after their Aston Villa match has been postponed, since Aston Villa is still dealing with all of the COVID-19 outbreak. The schedule for Wednesday is postponed. Spurs now gets Fulham on the same day. The match was originally December 30th, and now that is the new date for this one. Fulham versus Chelsea and Villa versus Everton dates have been changed to this weekend as well.
That makes sense, because it would not have made sense for Spurs to not play this midweek because of Villa's issues when Fulham was available to play and you needed to make up a game with them. That's smart. That's smart reshuffling. So that will help a little bit with some of the schedule issues that you could see down the road. Couple other silly season updates real quick before we move on. Upamecano from RB Leipzig. Fabrizio Romano reports that they are not open to selling him in January, which has been consistent. He is expected to go in the summer. Release clause is 42 million euro. I think somebody will hit that if need be to get that deal done. He's been linked with a number of clubs. We'll see where that goes. Last one that surprised me a little bit, Felipe Anderson. He is on loan at Porto from West Ham, and Everton are considering a move for the 27-year-old Brazilian midfielder. That's according to Team Talk.
Felipe Anderson, his time at West Ham, it's been hot, and he's been hot and cold. And when he's on, and you keep feeding him, and he's definitely one of the scorers that West Ham has needed under David Moyes. But when he's cold, he's off. And obviously, Everton's looking for more firepower. Understand this idea, and I know that they're looking for the former Felipe Anderson and not the latter Felipe Anderson that folks saw at West Ham.
We shall see. Updates on MLS, because there's a lot of different things going on. A lot of player rumors are starting to pop up. A lot of other things are starting to get going. One that was a little bit of a surprise is this update on Sacramento that came from The Athletic last week. They did not sign and submit their expansion agreement or make a planned payment towards their expansion fee by their December deadline. This was according to multiple sources. Now, the sources, and again, this is from The Athletic, this is from Paul Tenorio and Sam Stejskal. I think it was joint reporting on this one. They don't expect that to jeopardize anything. It has caused some concern around the league, which it should. It was going to happen in 2022, pushed back in 23 in light of the pandemic. All that makes sense. Sacramento and MLS signed several short-form agreements when the announcement was made in 2019. General term sheet that outlined the expansion fee. They were supposed to sign the long-form expansion agreement by the December deadline. These things can happen, and sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not. This one, because of the pandemic, because of the long-term effects on business, it does have to be a concern. And the league does have to start to get some answers pretty quickly from Sacramento on what's going on here. One of the owners of Sacramento went out and bought the Neverland Ranch here recently for over $20 million. So I would think that finances are not the issue here. I don't know what the issue is. That's not good. And you need some resolution. Now that it has been brought to light, I'll be curious to see where this goes. Are they going to need more time? Are they going to have to step back? Sacramento's been difficult. Everybody pushed and pushed and pushed for Sacramento to come in. They deserved it. Got to put them in. They struggled with the finances for a long period of time. It seemed like with Paul Buckle that everything was fine now. Well, they haven't signed the agreement, and they didn't make their payment. And I've seen this play out in American soccer before. And again, sometimes it works out. Other times, it is a precursor of some issues. We will see. As speculated in the Twitch pitch by Jason Nix, could they try to renegotiate the terms of that $200 million expansion fee? They could. I don't know what the terms of the agreement are, so I don't really know what kind of room they have to negotiate on that. I don't know if MLS would be willing to if they've signed an agreement. So that's what's tricky here. It could be like Jason's saying, the length of time or how the amounts are spread out or things like that. Sure, and that would be fine. I don't know. I don't know what the way forward here is, but that's got to hit some alarm bells.
Yeah, Sacramento Mayor Darrell Steinberg said in a statement as a part of all of this, "We've been in frequent contact with Ron Burkle and Commissioner Garber. They remain committed to our city and to finalizing their long-term expansion agreement with Major League Soccer. And also remember that the delaying of bringing Sacramento into MLS also led to a delay in the construction of the new soccer stadium at Rail Yards." Mm-hmm. So all of these things are in play right now. And yeah, I'm not at alarm bells by any stretch, but I do have a raised eyebrow, I guess is the best way to phrase it.
No, I'm at alarm bells. There should be alarm bells. Yeah, I mean, there has to be because they didn't sign the agreement. Now, look, if the reporting is incomplete and there was a discussion about, hey, we're going to need a little more time here, it's X, we need to adjust this, and everybody's on the same page, then great. We know, what's been reported, is that they haven't done these things that they were supposed to do. That's got to set off alarm bells. Yeah. If there's more to it and everybody knows what's going on, turn the alarm bells off.
Right.
But what we know right now, there has to be alarm bells. Steve Cherundolo's name has come up quite a bit. He is one former U.S. men's national team right back, should be in the Hall of Fame, legendary player, long run with Hanover in Germany, has started some coaching, has worked with Hanover, has worked with the U.S. men's national team, has worked with Stuttgart as an assistant. He hasn't been a first-team coach yet, and his name has started to come up with MLS jobs, and he told Stephen Goff of the Washington Post that he has spoken with multiple MLS clubs about their head coach openings. Right now, we know the three are Miami, we'll get to them in a minute, Toronto, and DC. Cherundolo's quote was, "I feel I am very prepared to make that next step. I know some people, the first thing that comes to mind is, yeah, you don't have experience as a head coach in the men's game. Yeah, of course, but I've done pretty much everything else," which is accurate. He's been a commentator as well on the world feed for German Bundesliga matches. I like the way he sees the game. I like the way he explains the game. Doesn't always mean it's a great transition to be a manager. It doesn't, but it is a good bit of help there. It is a good sign that he can explain the game really well. Now, can he do that to players? Can he motivate them? Those are the things that we don't know yet. Does he understand the game? Absolutely. Does he understand tactics? Absolutely. He explains it really well. Can he make that next step? We'll have to see. Bernd Ersberger, huge fan of him as a commentator. Johannes, amazing hire for any MLS club. I agree, he's been completely underrated. Katie Weaver, love to see the mayor of Hanover come to MLS and coach. It'd be the right move for DC because you would get him at a good price, I would expect, because of that lack of experience. But you're talking about an amount of experience that is better than some of the other names that have come up here, in my opinion anyway. He's got a wide range of experience, and I think what we've seen and heard from him, there's just more to go on. I think he'd be a great hire for DC. And if he is in the mix for DC, and he is interested in taking it, now the question would be how much are they going to offer, because it seems like they're lowballing stuff. I don't know, but you've had two people turn it down at the last minute. He would be a good fit.
I'm just still blown away about him not being in the Hall of Fame more than anything else. But to bring in someone with the experience, with the depth of knowledge, and just the knowledge base that someone like a Steve Cherundolo has, I'd absolutely love to see it. What everybody's been saying in the Twitch pitch this morning, right there with all of you. I'd love to see someone like Steve Cherundolo. Hell, I'd like to see Steve Cherundolo be that person that you can bring in and move DC forward. Would DC want to have these kinds of discussions, sit at the other side of the table with him to bring him in? I'd love to see it. Would they want to pull that kind of a trigger? That's the next step for me.
They should, in my opinion, if, all the reporting's been accurate and things fell apart with Armas and things fell apart with Pineda, the question would be how much they're going to offer. DC and Toronto are two very different jobs, and that also has to be understood here. There's a risk. There's a risk with any hire. I mean, I think this idea about, well, you can't hire him because he hasn't coached, or you can't go get this player because they haven't played in MLS, or you can't go get this player, or this player can't pick this because, there's been players that didn't make it from that country or from that club. It's pro sports, and these are humans, and they're all different. And you can base things on a track record. You can base things on video. And the best players make moves that make total sense, and everybody thinks they make sense at the time, and it doesn't work. And moves that nobody thinks will work. That's pro sports. That's the unknown. So, I mean, we can play that game all day, but Steve Cherundolo, after the two names that have come up that we know have gotten to that point, according to Stephen Goff, and I trust Stephen Goff's reporting. He's been doing this for a long time with the Washington Post. I would personally go for Steve Cherundolo over Armas because you don't have the baggage of having managed the rival. That move just never felt like it made sense for me. And I would go for him over Pineda because of two things. I think the level of experience comparing the two, I'll take what I've seen from Cherundolo over Pineda because I haven't really been all that impressed with the tactics and the game model of Seattle. And Pineda's been part of that. Brian Schmetzer's been making the decisions, but Pineda's been part of the staff. I'll take Cherundolo. I'll also take Cherundolo because we've heard him talk about the game. You get a sense when you hear him call a game, you understand how he sees it. And no, you can't compare Steve Cherundolo to Ben Olsen, Wildchar. I've got to thoroughly disagree here. They kept Ben Olsen around because they were cheap. Flat out. There's just no way around it. They didn't give him the amount of talent that he needed on a regular basis. The only time I felt like he had more talent than he got results from was, honestly, this past year. Ben Olsen made the most he could with a lot of cast-offs, a lot of low-priced talent. Yes, then they went out and got Wayne Rooney, and they filled around him with more cast-offs. And that ultimately didn't work for a lot of things. I don't think that's Ben Olsen's fault. Ben couldn't take the team further. he was what they needed for a long time because they weren't going to go spend on anybody else. But he couldn't elevate the team, and that was always the concern I had. If they are going to try to be elevated, and it appears, maybe I'm wrong, it appears what they're trying to do to elevate is develop players from within. You've got a core coming through. You've got more coming. You're starting to see Loudoun United become a really good extension of their academy. They finally stopped charging kids for the academy as well. They're making strides in that room, that area, that part of their club's development. They can be what Philadelphia is plus, in my opinion, because I think their ownership can spend more than Philadelphia's can. You need a manager who can come in, relate to those players. You need a manager who can come in and develop those players. You need a manager who can come in and grow with those players. That's why I think they're looking at assistants, which I get, also cheaper. It's a reality. And I think Cherundolo could be the best option they have. The Rodolfo Borrell one for Manchester City is very interesting. More experience. You know, you wonder why he didn't want to make the jump to be a first-team manager sooner, if that was the case. Cherundolo feels like a good fit for them, but it's going to come down to how much they offer. And does he want to walk away from potentially getting a job in Germany, where he's played and spent most of his professional life? That we don't know. That we just don't know. We'll see. It's interesting that he spoke to Stephen Goff in Washington, D.C., and D.C. United are one of the teams that have a vacancy. That's why I feel like, maybe it's a little bit of a, hey, I'm here, I'm still here if we've talked. Yeah. I'm still interested. I don't know. Have to wait and see on that one. A couple things on the branding side in MLS, because this is going to become a conversation this week on Thursday with the Montreal Impact announcing their rebrand at 11 a.m. Eastern. They've been teasing some things on social media. We've seen a couple of shirts drop. It's a virtual event, obviously, and it will include all of the key figures here. Their creative co-director, Justin Kingsley, will be there. They're all going to take questions. It sounds like they are going to be the French equivalent of an FC Montreal. I think it's CF Montreal is what it will end up being. That's what we've heard so far. I want to hear how they spin it. I don't know if that improves anything. Montreal Impact is a name that came from the 90s. It sounds like it came from the 90s. I also think it's been there long enough that it's fine. I don't know if they needed to change the name as part of this rebrand. We'll see, because if you're going to do that, you've got to get it right, and you've got to win over the people who might have been attached to the Impact name over now, since 93. This is a long time. I don't know. CF Montreal, if you start with more of a generic traditional name and branch out from there, fine. If you revert to a traditional name, I don't know. FC Dallas did that. They were the Dallas Burn, which is, again, a 90s kind of name, right? And they changed it to FC Dallas. I don't know if it helped. I don't know if it hurt. I don't know if it's a wash. It kind of feels that way for Montreal. I don't think it helps them in any way.
This is my rhetorical question here. What's so wrong with being the Montreal Impact?
I could have had those answers in 94, 95, 96 because it's it's a name that's kind of, all right, and what are your players? Are they impactors? That kind of stuff.
They're impact players is what they are.
That's lame. See, that's a reason to change it. Look, it's a 90s name, but it's been there since 93. Now it's got history attached to it. If you had changed it in 2003, like Dallas did, all right. Now, you're changing a lot of history. 28 years of history, if I can do math this morning. That's a lot.
Yes. 721, yeah.
That's a lot. I don't know what the net win here is. I just don't.
New merchandising angle, stuff to buy.
I think you could do that without changing the name. That's the part that I don't really get here, because that's what we're going to see in Chicago. And let's go over to the Chicago side real quick. They said that, and Mansueto, the owner, said that if this didn't work last year, when everybody went nuts about it, that they would change it. They're going to. They're going to drop this crown thing after the 21 season is over. They're going to have roundtables and surveys and interviews and all this. The name is going to stay the same in their case, which is what I think Montreal should be doing. It's going to be the Chicago Fire Football Club. Everything else is on the table according to the ownership. They could go back to the red jerseys. They're not going to go back to that cross logo that, kind of evoked the fire department. They're not
the Maltese cross, yeah.
Right, Florian cross. They're not going to go back to that, but they're open to elements of that crest appearing in the new one. Different things. There was a lantern design on the Stand for Chicago patch. That could be something they use. They have brought in Matthew Wolf, who has done a really good job with a lot of designs around American soccer, LAFC, New York City, Oakland Roots, the Green Bay Voyagers, so on and so forth. They're doing the right things. They're not changing the name. I think Montreal could do the things with merch and logos and branding without changing the name.
And speaking of which, about teams in Chicago, apparently the NISA franchise is now down to their Final Four.
What do they have on the table for their Final Four?
Chicago Sting, and this is folks who are voting through to this to get this bracket. So Chicago Sting, Second City FC, Point Chicago, and Chicago House.
Chicago House?
Yeah.
Okay. I know a lot of people...
I'm trying to find the explanations as to why, because they did post them.
Yeah, we don't need to get into it too much. I know a lot of people will like Second City FC. It sounds good. It's going to take a lot of work to make that kind of a name fly in the United States, just because of our typical naming conventions. If you want to buy into doing all that work, go for it, because that could be pretty cool. And I know Second City in Chicago is a very... it's a strong reference. That could work. Point Chicago, I don't know. Chicago Sting is a historical reference, and that's another one of those NASL names that actually has value. There's still some of those old names that have value. It's not bad. It's not bad. It's interesting. I would be fine with Chicago Sting. I really, truly don't hate Second City FC, and I usually don't like those kinds of names because I worry about how your average sports fan would get it. I think, and I'm not a Chicago guy, if you are, you'd have to tell me that would work or wouldn't work. I think it would. I think they could make that one fly. And I think in the third division level, you could actually do a lot with that. If that was the MLS name, that might be a little bit harder. Mazzano says, as a 90s WCW fan, he likes Sting. Okay. If they play off of that, that'd be funny. I just like the black.
They get a win, if they get a decisive win at the end, that's your Stinger splash. Is that how you play it?
No, we don't want that. No, we don't want anybody being Stinger splashed. If they do want to play Seek and Destroy by Metallica coming out, that's kind of cool. I'm down with that. The black and yellow, the classic kind of Sting feel, modernize it. I could totally go for that. That would be great. I think Second City will be the one they'll probably go with. I like it. I usually don't like those names. I really don't, because I worry about how well they'll cross over. That one feels like it might be able to work. Montreal, I think they could have accomplished a lot of the things they want to accomplish without changing the name. And that makes it then more complicated to do the things they want to do. Yeah. We'll have to see what they end up announcing on Thursday. So stay on the lookout for that one. It's right after we finish on Thursday, so we'll talk about it then. Player rumor things going on in MLS. Vancouver is linked to Deiber Caicedo from Deportivo Cali. Discovery rights were with Nashville. They have agreed that if they can get the deal done, looks like in the $2.5 million range. Can play on either wing. He's 20 years old. 67 pro appearances with Deportivo Cali at 20. That's pretty good. Vancouver's been linked to some players in the $1 million plus range, which is good to see. Very good to see. Thomas Jewin says it's a shame on Montreal real fast that they didn't go with Olympique Montreal. I don't think they actually could, Because I've wondered the same. Like, they're one of the few that you could go with that and make it work. I think there are some issues with the IOC in terms of the branding and what they could do that they might not be able to pull that one off. That's what I've heard. I don't know if that's accurate, but that's what I've seen a lot. So they might not be able to do it. Debor Caicedo to Vancouver is on the table. We'll see if that one gets done. $2.5 million. Portland trying to get their deal done with Felipe Mora, and it's become more of a priority with the injuries they've had up top, and in the talk about loaning Jeremy Abobasi out. You know, they need to make sure they've got a player up top with Nish Goda, who had the ACL injury late in the year. He's probably done for this whole year, you would expect, or most of it. He was on loan from Pumas. They're trying to get a permanent deal done. There was a $4 million purchase option in that original loan. They have reportedly agreed to a new figure with Pumas retaining a portion of his rights. I guess that's probably the trade-off you had to make. 27 years old. He had 7 goals, 2 assists in 19 appearances, 13 starts, Chilean international, 5 caps. Feels like a no-brainer, right? I mean, he did well there last year. You bring him back. You know you're going to be missing Nish Goda. Better than going out in the market and trying to find somebody who's unproven for you, I would think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Stick with the known commodities, and that way you know what you're getting. You know what you hope that you will get for a subsequent season. So, yeah, absolutely right there with you. Stick with what you know. Yeah.
LA Galaxy are linked to a rarely seen West Brom goalkeeper, Jonathan Bond. Yeah. 27 years old. He hasn't played for West Brom this season. I think he's third choice there right now. He's not on a huge salary. He hasn't played in the league in his 2.5 years at West Brom. Okay. I mean, we see this sometimes where a goalkeeper's just behind 2 or 3 people and they don't get that opportunity. They get it and they shine. I have no idea what the connection is here because it's a pretty deep level scouting if you're going to get this guy who hasn't played in the league in 2.5 years for them. So keep an eye on that one, I guess. They don't really have a starting level goalkeeper at the moment, so that's one of those 4 or 5 potential starters that they need to go sign that you could check off if they get it done. I guess, although he hasn't really been a starter in his career. I don't know why else you'd be going to get him.
Yeah.
Okay, LA Galaxy.
6'5". Before he wasn't playing at West Brom, he was on loan to Peterborough United, 37 appearances there. Before they're loaned to Gillingham, Reading, Bury, Dagenham Redbridge, Forest Green Rovers, 2 stints at Brackley Town, and Watford. And he's been with the Welsh U17, U19, England U20, U21. So I have no earthly idea what the connection is, but you've obviously seen something in a 6'5" keeper that's not getting any reps at West Brom.
One other thing on Chicago, Colonel and Kefsey are yelling at me in the Twitch pitch because of the Chicago House referencing music. Yeah. Also, the name that the U.S. Soccer's headquarters in Chicago, it's called the Chicago House, or Soccer House in Chicago. It just...
It's a Soccer House.
It's...
I have to think too much to try to get there. And if I have to think too much to try to get there, I like the idea of Second City because of what it means to the fabric of the city. But for me to have to think about Chicago House, if I'm outside the city of Chicago and I see Chicago House, I'm like, okay, is it like a brownstone? Is it like a 3-bedroom, 2-bath somewhere? In,
if I am talking about dance music, I know house music. And I don't always think of Chicago first with house music either. It feels like a big reach. Big reach. It's the third best out of those to me. It's my opinion. I'm not running the team. It's not my team, so do what you want. But I don't think it's better than Second City FC. I don't think it's better than Chicago Sting. It feels like a big reach. Big reach. Just my opinion, but if I'm the dummy, then I'm the dummy. It's okay. It wouldn't be the first time.
I'll second that one.
Well, we already know with music, John, we can't count on you for anything outside of prog rock from the 70s. Pretty much.
True, or one-hit wonders from the 80s.
Some of them, and Canadian rockers, too. Canadian indie rockers, I think. I don't think you're down with the Nickelback.
Occasionally, I like their harmony.
Oh, boy. Okay, you shouldn't have said that.
I have enjoyed some of the Nickelback, yes.
Oh, man, that's not good.
Bruh.
That's not good at all. Okay, we're going to move on before John gets reamed on the Twitch pitch.
I like Photograph and I like Rockstar.
I'm trying to like leave because you're burying yourself.
And boom goes the dynamite.
This is news.
Yeah, it's really
This
bad.
is different from
red card salt. You're getting screamed at. Okay.
the promo read.
I'm gonna try to save you. Yeah, you just poisoned your promo read completely. Toronto. They are trying to get more defenders in. We've talked about their back line. It's getting older. They need some reinforcements. They don't have Laurent Simon back anymore. They don't have Eric Zavaleta back anymore. They need somebody to come in. But they're looking at a 28-year-old from France, Luc Landry, who is a former PSG guy. He is at Nîmes Olympique. 28. He's been there since 2018. He's out of contract at the end of the summer. So he could come on a pre-deal. Played youth at PSG, only made one first-team appearance. Went out on loan to Ajaccio and Clermont. Played for Lens 79 times between 2013 and 2017. He played for the France youth national teams up to the U21s. Not exactly an inspiring get here when you need to get younger at center back because you have Mavinga and Gonzalez who are 30 and 32. You need a little bit younger there. 28, it's a little bit younger, I guess. But
how much treads on the tires at 28, I guess?
I'm not worried about tread on the tires. There's more tread on the tires on him than there is on Gonzalez, but why don't you go for a 22 or 23-year-old who might actually turn into something?
Yeah.
That's, I don't know. I don't get it. Real Salt Lake interested in Manchester City prospect Timi Sobowale. A lot of competition, though, according to the Daily Mail. He is a 19-year-old defender, Ireland U19 international. He's talked about coming to RSL. He's on the radar of Crystal Palace. He is on the radar of Millwall, Stoke, and Blackburn. Joined Manchester City in 2018. He's only played once for the U23s at Manchester City, so he hasn't even been playing at that level. Came from an Irish side, Villa FC, in 2018. I mean, it's hard to say. The 19-year-old has barely played, so we don't really know. So let's see what happens here. But that's more interesting to me than a 28-year-old from France who hasn't really amounted to much. That's more interesting, and there's more upside. So it's also probably a lot cheaper for RSL, and since they don't have an owner at the moment, that is what kind of makes a lot of sense, right?
Yes.
Yeah, people are riled up about your Nickelback takes.
I didn't say that I liked their whole library. I just said I liked a couple of their songs. Anytime you can integrate ZZ Top into a song, I'm all for it. Once again, it plays back to my AOR references. All right, fine. All right.
All I got.
I said I didn't say that I liked the entire library. That's all I'm saying.
All I got. You don't ever want to admit that you like anything Nickelback out loud. Unless maybe you're in Canada. Maybe it's a little bit different there. I don't know.
I would say that I would like the Hip and Rush long before I would say that I like Nickelback.
I would hope so. Jeez. What do we have on the Twitters this morning, John?
We have stuff on the Twitters.
What do we have?
So we will go through the Twitters here. Nathan Pugh is fired up this morning.
Oh, boy.
Michael Oliver thanks for nothing, as he refers to him as the plonker of Merseyside. 2, I still don't quite understand the Montreal rebrand. I'm obviously missing something, so please explain it to me like I'm 5. Why are they doing this again? And 3, I have $5 on Cité being drawn against Chorley in the 4th round and then against the winner of Doncaster and Crawley in the 5th round, #rigged, with a couple of goofy-faced emojis for the FA Cup.
Do you want to decipher the first point? Because you just kind of blasted through it.
I would like to know why Nathan thinks Michael Oliver is the plonker of Merseyside.
Oh, you missed that.
Yes, I did.
Okay. I'll tell you how you can correct that one next time.
Sure.
So there's a search function on Twitter, right?
Okay.
And you type in Michael Oliver, and you see
sure there's a lot of stuff attached.
No, there's a thing where you type it in, and the search gives you the top responses to that, or the top things referring to Michael Oliver. And you would know that people are riled up, and especially the Liverpool fans are riled up. And we talked about this.
He admitted he should have shown Jordan Pickford a red. Nicely done. How many months after the fact?
It's been gracious. A few. Well, I mean, what's he supposed to do? But he at least admitted it. He got it wrong, and I thought he got it wrong at the time. It was completely reckless from Pickford, and it should have been a red at the time. Now, the interesting quote is Oliver said, "We got sucked too much into going step by step as opposed to thinking of the bigger process, which was considering the challenge as well and not just the fact it can't be a penalty. We should have restarted with the offside as we did, but with a different punishment for Jordan Pickford." And that's exactly what they should have done. They got too hung up on the offside portion and not on that challenge that, you know, did Pickford try to, did he go in planning to scissor the leg and injure him? I don't think he did, but he still went in recklessly and did that, and that has to be a red all day long.
Yep.
So, the Liverpool side is going to be very upset about that, and they should be. And it should have been handled correctly at the time.
Antonio is in this morning with a couple of things. First off, Leeds with two wide eyes for an emoji after their loss in the FA Cup over the weekend. And he also says that Pep seems to be playing Cancelo at right, who's normally a right back centrally. He wants to transition the #FrancoFalse9 campaign to a Franco False 10.
Look, you're going to get used to something, and you see it with Pep, and you see how the English media throws their hands up in the air and throws things against the wall whenever Pep does it. Positions are not rigid. And it's going to be the same here in Atlanta. Positions are not rigid. Formations are not rigid. So if you have a player who, for example, is a left-footed player, there will be times that they will play on the right side, inverted. That'll happen. Then other times they'll play on the other side. Jurgen Damm, you could see him play on the left and cut inside. You could absolutely see that a lot. Gabriel Heinze likes inverted wingers. You could totally see that. You could see inverted fullbacks. You've seen it. You could see fullbacks come inside as central midfielders. Seen it plenty of times. It's not rigid. So players will move around. I mean, Franco is a guy who has the characteristics of being able to play a lot of places. A 10, maybe not. A holding midfielder in certain situations, sure. A right back who tucks inside, as we saw Greg Berhalter trying to accomplish after Pep was doing it, absolutely. Yeah, I could see Escobar being comfortable playing in front of the center backs. Sure, why not? I mean, these things can happen, and a lot of it is depending on the opponent. A lot of it is depending on the players around. So, yeah, he'll move around. Everybody will. That's why I think the Fernando Meza possibility of playing as a 6 is more in line now than it maybe was before. You'll see movement. Don't get hung up on that. You're kind of going to have to look at it every game by game and how he approaches that match and how that opponent, what they could do to hurt you. It's all about, everything about positional play is about creating superiority. And I know we've talked a lot from a defensive standpoint about numerical superiority. Superiority is not always numerical. You're going to look at times to create a quality superiority. So if there is a part of the field that you think you can hurt the opponent with, you might move a player there to line up with them. Marcelino Moreno, for example, could play anywhere across the front line, maybe except for the 9. So if he's out wide in a match, it's because there's a matchup there that you like. might be a fullback who is awful against the dribble. Cool, I want my best dribbler to go up against them as much as possible. You're going to see these things happen because you're trying to create superiority. Don't get hung up on position or formation and, you can't change it. Those days are done. There's managers who are seeing the game differently now, and Gabriel Heinze is one. Pep Guardiola's been doing this for a while.
Chris Hutchison says that if it truly is a hashtag Mellow Monday.
It is a Mellow Monday because my voice can't go much further than mellow at the moment.
Chris is going to draw a warm bath, fill it with essential oils, and light some scented candles, and then immerse himself and let the mellow wash over him.
I might need to do that later myself. Yeah, it's definitely a Mellow Monday. It's been way too manic as of late, so we're going mellow with the Monday today.
Rich Ransom's in with a couple of thoughts. His first thought on the day is, tell me everything about Matthew Hoppe and how he can start for the USMNT right now.
Oh, jeez. Here we go. Overhype. Let's roll. Great day for Matthew Hoppe. 19 years old from California. Hat trick for Schalke. They finally get a win over Hoffenheim. Had the hat trick in the 63rd minute. He played with Barcelona's academy in Arizona. Caden Clark came out of that. Julian Araujo came out of that. Bryce Duke with LAFC came out of that. Made his first team debut a couple of months ago. He's a player who's benefiting from a few things. An opportunity and a managerial change. Christian Gross is the fourth coach at Schalke this season. Arrived in late December. He selected him for his first two games, including this one. Described him as a player who doesn't shy away from working extremely hard in training, unbelievably ambitious, has tremendous commitment, and only thinks about Schalke. He wants to do whatever it takes to get us out of this situation. He's still very young and still has lots to learn in order to become a top-rate finisher, but we're working on that. He scored 1 goal in 16 games with Schalke's reserves last season. In the 2018-19 Development Academy season here with Barca USA, scored 29 goals in 23 games. He had committed to San Diego State and then offered the trial with Schalke, did well, got the contract, stuck it out. Huge opportunity here. He takes and makes the most of it, leads them to success. They were playing California Dreamin' in the stadium afterwards, which was very cool. He is not going to play for the U.S. men's national team tomorrow. Slow down. But he is a player that you want to see develop now. He's kind of jumping in from way off the radar. Good. I think what you're starting to see now is there are players who are being developed in a more proper way than we've ever seen. Barcelona has, it's kind of a branding thing, Sam Williamson, with Barca USA. It's not feeding into Barcelona in Spain. This happens a lot in U.S. youth soccer. But they are using elements of how Barcelona intends to develop players. And they've, as I mentioned, with the players they're producing, they're doing a good job. But that's happening in a lot of places. They don't have the Barcelona name that they're paying for to brand on it. Because it's not, I don't believe it is run by Barcelona, by FC Barcelona. I believe they are paying for the name and the partnership and attachment and curriculum and stuff like that. But you're seeing across the country now a better development of players. And in the past, if a kid went from a club in Arizona to Schalke, he wouldn't be able to make that jump that quick. Now, you're being developed better. And you're able to make these jumps. That's why you're seeing a Caden Clark come into MLS and do well straight away. That's why you're seeing academy kids here, like Caleb Wiley, come in and do really well in USL Championship straight away at 15. That's why you're seeing these things that we haven't seen in the past. In the past, players weren't developed to be professionals. They were developed to go to college. Different kind of game, entirely. More physical. You have to have a technical component to be able to play at the next level. The way we were developing players in the past, there wasn't enough attention put on the technical components. It just wasn't. Players weren't good enough. They couldn't play under pressure because they didn't have the technical ability to do it. Now they're getting that. Now there's other things for them to learn, and there's other things for them to get better at, handling pressure, things like that. But the players coming out of this country are better than they've ever been. And they're coming out of places that are a surprise. In the past, it was you'd see these youth national teams, and you still see it, although it's starting to spread out more. Bunch of Texas kids, bunch of California kids, bunch of kids in the Pennsylvania area because they've got a lot of good coaches there for a long time, bunch of Florida kids. And that's about it. Now you're seeing more and more from different parts of the country, and they can compete. And when they get that opportunity, they can hang. And right now, with the way the game is, with COVID, with more opportunities happening for players than ever before, because they have to. If it's injuries, if it's schedule compression, if it's players missing games due to COVID for whatever reason, we've seen it with Liverpool this season with injuries. We've seen it with clubs all over the place, with kids stepping in and making the most of their opportunity. American kids can do that too. And that's what's been pretty exciting to see. And this is another example.
We've got more stuff on Twitter since it's the top of the hour. You want me to butcher the promo?
Man, see, you've already done it again. You need to stop doing that. Have some confidence, John.
Oh, I have confidence. I'm just waiting for the low grades.
Well, no, you poisoned the judges. There's no way around that.
That's what I'm saying.
Have some confidence. Do the Stuart Smalley mirror thing and get ready for this.
And gosh darn it, people like me.
You ready?
Oh, sure. Hit it.
Oh, hold on. And here we go.
Appolinsky and Associates, LLC, proud supporters of everything soccer down here in the SDH network. For wrongful death and serious injury matters, there's only one place that you need to contact, and it is that particular law firm, Appolinsky and Associates, LLC. A couple different ways that you can do it if this is a concern of yours. You can give them a phone call, 404-377-9191. You can shoot Steve an email directly, steve at aa-legal.com, or you can go on the World Wide Web. Large device or small, laptop, desktop, mobile, whichever way that you do it. You type aa-legal.com into the bar, you hit enter, you hit return, you hit arrow, whatever advances it to the next screen. The home page at aa-legal.com, a pop-up window pops up low right-hand corner because that's what pop-up windows do. They pop up 24/7, 365 and a quarter. Thank you, Chris Hutchison, for reminding us of that. You can get your questions answered. We still have to find out who is on the other end of that pop-up window answering these questions. It could be Steve. We don't know. We need to get that answered here in 2021. But when you get your question answered, you are getting it answered by a firm that is recognized as Legal Elite by Georgia Trend Magazine for being one of the top 100 firms in this here state of Georgia. Over 30 years of experience, over $40 million in judgments for their clients in Georgia and Alabama. For wrongful death and serious injury matters, proud supporter of everything soccer down here in the SDH network. It is Appolinsky and Associates, LLC. The website is aa-legal.com.
We'll see how the judges score it.
Yeah.
Bring
it on. It's a Monday. Let's go.
All right.
Come on.
Let me scroll back.
Let's spring. Come on.
-1 for the lack of confidence. -5 for low confidence. +2 for the pink room in the background.
Art Deco will do that for you.
-1 for not knowing who's behind the pop-up. Got to do your research. Okay, 7 out of 10 from Fender. Soothing pink atmosphere.
Thank you.
But
you
lost one for the aggressive lamp. KFC 7, omitting the bad Muzak take. 7.1 from Domer. 4 from Forecard. 5 from Ricky. 6.8 from Sean. 7 out of 10 from Matt. 8 out of 10. Good hand flourishes from Soccer for Good OG.
Thank you, OG.
Domer says the color is pank, not pink.
Yeah,
pank.
That's true, especially here in the Panhandle. It probably is pank.
That's true. 7 from Jason Nix, 6 from Ragamuffin, 6.5 from Sam Williamson. A little fast at the end. Yeah, it did speed up just a little bit.
Because the music dumped out on me on this end, and I was trying to figure out where it was so I could time the .com.
You should know it by heart by now. Florida,
but
pank, and
when I
turquoise.
talk, I can't hear it.
Oh, well. That's on you, and that's your equipment, sir. That's all I can tell you.
I'll stipulate to that, too.
I can only do so much here. Don't be trying to blame Mateo for things.
Now, Mateo already comes with the Twitter muscles when I try to do anything like that.
You got to be careful.
At SDH Mateo, by the way, if you want to follow and like him as well.
Yes. Sixth Gear wants my score. I don't score. I don't give scores. That's not my role.
Yeah, he's Switzerland in this case. He's the one that just punches the buttons in the music and waits for the segment to end.
I just play the music, and I just hold the cough button to try to help John with his shoddy equipment, and there we go. That's all I can do.
He's the DJ. He's the DJ here.
All I can do with it. What else you want to get into?
We still have plenty on Twitter, by the way.
Oh, okay. Well, let's go.
Oh, well, first and foremost, shout out to Ricky Ricardo, who posted a video to our timeline this morning in trying to determine pink or blue, and the answer through the confetti cannon is blue. So congratulations on the...
Excellent.
So it's going to be a boy for the Ricardo clan. So congratulations on that.
Congrats, Ricky.
Tafka is in this morning with a couple of things. So we'll start with the first one, and it goes back to Moises Caicedo. Showing my cynicism. This is Tafka who said that, not me.
Yeah, okay.
Tafka, showing my cynicism, quote, is it possible that Caicedo is banking on Brighton being relegated with a forced sale clause in the contract, basically giving him a layover on his way to Manchester United? More to follow.
That's what I heard with that. Sorry.
Yep.
No, I don't think he's banking on anything like that. I don't think he wants to take 6 months off.
And then, thankfully, it seems, if nothing else, that the Caicedo saga went quickly and Atlanta isn't being strung along. I'm sure they can work in the interim, but you can't sign two players, so you can only do so much work on a backup signing.
Yeah, but you can also pull out of a signing, and we see that happen sometimes. I mean, you're working on multiple things, and if you have one ready to go, it's, hey, this is where we are. We have to hold on to this for a minute before we make a final decision, and you hope the other club will wait for you. It's all a dance. That's just how it is. You tried to get a very good player, and good on you for trying to get him. If you don't, and he goes to Brighton, that's the player's decision. That's the club's decision, and we see how it works out. I'm not optimistic about it because I don't think Brighton is the best place for him to go for his development. We will see if that's true or not. I want to see more players make that jump to an MLS, but Ecuador is an area that you haven't seen many young players come to MLS yet. So there's still some education to be done there, still some work to be done. We'll see how it goes.
Chris Hutchison, on the notion of the Mellow Monday, says, electrical banana is going to be a sudden craze. Snip, they call me Mellow Yellow. So Chris Hutchison, quite right.
Very nice.
Yes. Rich Ransom. Is DC just trying to find the cheapest coaching options available? Plus, will they go interim coach when the season starts?
No, well, I mean, I don't think so because I don't think the season is going to start at the beginning of March. I do think it's going to be pushed back a little bit. We'll wait and see. I have heard that Gabriel Heinze is going to get into the country this week. On the Atlanta side of things. Peter Verme said he wasn't expecting them to open camp until February 1st. There will be preseason games. Probably all, I mean, I don't think there's a probably. I would assume that games are going to be played behind closed doors, and probably a lot of these preseason games for MLS teams are going to be done at training facilities just because that's what you're going to have to do. You've got to get your protocols nailed down again for what that looks like and how you do these things. It's not going to be easy. There's a lot to work through. My gut feeling is still the same as it's been for a while. I think you hold off the start of the MLS season until after the March international break, which would put it the first weekend in April, which would mean you'd miss probably 3 match weeks that you were expecting to use, and maybe 3 games or 4. You can make that work. I mean, even if you did, just from a very simplistic standpoint, you take that first month ahead of that break and you move it to the end around the international breaks at the end of the year, and you do your playoffs like you've been doing, where you go up until the November break for your season, come back after the November break for your playoffs, and finish in that second week of December timeframe, you're good. And you don't have to compress the schedule any more than you ever have before. You will have more of your games in front of fans because you're pushing at least 3 back to the end, and maybe even more because you could schedule a little lighter in April, May if you need to. You can make it work. And that's my gut feeling is what you're going to do. Going with what Peter Vermes said about starting in February, that's what it maybe feels like. We'll have to wait and see. So on the DC side, I think by a beginning of April start, they'll have somebody in place. So I don't think they'll have an interim. Are they trying to go cheap? I don't know what Chris Armas would be asking for. Going for an assistant from Seattle and Pineda, yeah, I think you could lean to that and assume that, and that's a safe assumption. They haven't really spent a ton outside of that move for Rooney in the past. So let's see what they do. It seems like they are. I don't know for sure, but I think they'll have it nailed down here by the start of training camp. If they got an extra 3 weeks to get it done, I think they'll have somebody in place.
Is Pineda coaching waiting in Seattle, you think?
It's a safe assumption. I mean, I don't see Schmetzer. Schmetzer's a little bit younger than we thought he was. I don't see him there for 10 more years. Would Pineda wait that long? I don't know. I don't know what the relationship is there. I mean, he was looking at he did interview, and he was to the point that they were talking about a deal. How, loyal is he to Seattle, if that's the case? Don't know. And we don't really know if Seattle offered him more to stay or if he just wasn't happy with what DC offered. Not sure. That's the hard part about this. So I don't know. I mean, it's a safe assumption, but I wouldn't run to the bank with it.
Tafka is back in with some Manchester City stuff.
Okay.
And he says that Zach Steffen has shown very well in Ederson's COVID absence. My question is, will it ever be enough to be the starter? Manchester City are going to protect the value of their assets, which includes not benching a 56 million euro keeper for at most a marginal difference in performance. How long does Steffen wait? Or is he using Manchester City as a launching pad for a first-team role elsewhere?
No, Tafka, I got to thoroughly disagree with one aspect of what you said. They would absolutely bench a $56 million keeper for marginal improvement. It's the margins are what makes Pep Guardiola and Manchester City and top teams. So yeah, they would. They absolutely would. They're not going to play somebody because they cost them more. I don't think Zach Steffen's better than Ederson right now. I don't think he is, but they're not going to play him just because they spent money on him. That is 100% misreading the way that Pep and City operate. Now, Pep said, and he said all the right things about another good performance from Zach Steffen, 3-0 win over Birmingham City in FA Cup. He said that Steffen can fight for number one. He can put pressure on Eddie, but Eddie is the number one in this position right now. If he performs well, he stays number one. But we cannot forget, talking about Steffen, he played at Stamford Bridge and Old Trafford and solved all the situations he faced brilliantly. He's done everything he has needed to do to put pressure on. That is what he needs to do. That's the job of the number two. I don't think he is nearly as good on the distribution, and that's a huge element here. So no, I don't think he beats Ederson out for the number one job anytime soon. But if he is playing better, he will play. Pep is not going to play somebody on reputation or on transfer fee. He's going to play him on what he sees in training and what he sees in games. And he will also ride a hot hand. So, Steffen is going to continue to get games while he's performing well. No question about it for me. I don't think he's a better goalkeeper, but he's doing a lot better than I expected him to stepping in. He's not looking as shaky on distribution as I worried about, and he's making his manager happy. So he's doing all the right things.
Last thing on the board on the Twitters until more folks jump in. And Tino is saying that I can't leak confidence like I did before the read at the top of the hour. Yeah,
you can't. That's bad. That sets you up for failure. You got to fake it until you make it, John.
So that's the last part, and a lot of folks on Twitter are congratulating Ricky Ricardo and Clan for the confetti announcement.
As they should. Jason Nick said he was listening to SiriusXM FC this morning. They were talking about Bielsa's Leeds loss to Crawley Town. said Bielsa was daft and didn't know anything about defending. I don't know who said it. Bielsa's not daft. I'm not 100% up on all of my insults in British slang, so I would like to know the full explanation of daft in this context. But he doesn't know anything about defending. I don't. I mean, you can look it up, but I don't know if that's going to actually answer the question in the way we're looking for here. I think it is more of a context issue. But anyway, because it doesn't matter. He knows about defending. They got beat. And it's an absolute question because they shouldn't be losing that game because they went with their first team. One of the things I noticed about it was after they conceded, which is a brilliant goal that they conceded the first goal on, they got away from their game. And it's the first time I've really seen that from Leeds. And I don't know if it's just the FA Cup playing a lesser opponent in terms of quality. They got antsy. They thought they could just, start to abandon the principles and play in a different manner. I don't know. I was surprised by their performance. I really was. Leeds has had problems in these games recently. For a while, they've had problems against lower tier competition in FA Cup. They haven't done well in those. Bielsa absolutely knows about defending. A lot of people get hung up on, whether it's Bielsa, whether it's Pep, that positional play model, and they talk about the possession. They talk about the way the team attacks and how many players they commit to the attack. Most players who have played for Pep talk about how he spends more time on the defense than on the offense. There's more effort put into how to defend than how to attack. Same with Bielsa. The defending is key. They didn't get it done, but that doesn't mean that Marcelo Bielsa doesn't know about defending. It's a rather arrogant statement to make. I don't know who made it. I'm just going on what Jason Nick said, but I would thoroughly disagree with that statement.
Silly or foolish is the base definition from dictionary.
I knew that. I didn't know if there was any more to it. Thank you, John.
That's what we're here for. Just call me Webster.
No, your name's John. We haven't talked about the lower division reshuffling in the United States yet. North Carolina FC dropping down to USL League One. Some quotes on it. Steve Malik, the owner of North Carolina FC, also the owner of the North Carolina Courage. We are pleased to continue the partnership we've had with the USL since 2018 as North Carolina FC prepares to compete in USL League One. We're in the midst of a very important period with key initiatives. In addition to the strategic move to League One, we remain focused on the Downtown South project, that's the stadium, and the associated future professional soccer stadium, the 2021 North Carolina Courage season, and enhancing our youth-to-pro development model for both boys and girls. Alex Andrijev of the News and Observer in the Triangle had a couple of additional points. According to an October report by The Athletic, USL Championship clubs paid $225,000 in annual dues to the league last year. League One club dues were just under $100,000. That's a savings. It's not a ton, but it is a savings. And right now, every dollar matters. Kurt Johnson said, and he's the president of North Carolina Football Club, "It is important that as the landscape of soccer in North Carolina evolves, our club does the same. We can do more to develop our best players and are committing that player development will be the focus of our professional team for the foreseeable future." That's a little bit of a change. We've seen going from the Carolina Railhawks to North Carolina FC, a lot of veteran players, a lot of established professionals, not as many up-and-coming players coming from these partnerships that NCFC has in the Triangle on the youth side, the huge partnership with Castle, which is one of the biggest youth clubs in the country. We haven't seen as much of that. Their youth academy will also be part of the USL Academy League. The North Carolina FC U23s, the League 2 team in USL will continue as well. So you've got a real pathway to pro kind of model here. I've said this before, and I know some in the lower division world get really hung up on Division 2 or Division 3 or Division 4 or whatever. I don't know if it really truly matters to the fans from a competitive standpoint, because I mean, I've said this about teams in this region before. Do you care if you're D2 or D3? Do you care if you're playing, now I know League One is not thoroughly built out yet, and you still have some teams that are further afield, but you know, if you're North Carolina last year playing St. Louis in a normal season, of course last year wasn't, but if you're in the Eastern Conference and you're playing St. Louis FC, do you care about playing St. Louis more than you would about playing Greenville? I don't think so. I think the local rivalries are more important. And I think that League One, if you just start to read the tea leaves a little bit, Byrne says, doesn't USL League One have higher travel costs than the championship? Fewer teams, no regional pods available. I think this is part of the move to change that, and it's something that USL has talked about. League One has definitely talked about. If you look at where things could go, you know, you've got Charlotte, for example, and there's speculation that they could go to League One. Chris Ashley's talked about that. Why would they stay in USL Championship with Charlotte FC coming in to the market? It'd make a little more sense for them to go League One as well. Okay? That's another one nearby. You've already got Richmond that made the move to League One. You've got Greenville nearby. Charleston is another one that I've expected to be in that conversation at some point. I haven't heard it yet. You know, is there a pride thing about being Division II versus Division III? There could be. I don't know if it really makes a difference without promotion relegation, to be perfectly honest. You know, do fans say, I'm not going to go to North Carolina FC games now because it's not Division II? I don't think so. I really, truly don't. Player costs are going to be less because there is an expectation that the salaries are lower in League One. Should they be? Again, without promotion relegation, I don't know if that is a must, but that's kind of where things are from a market standpoint. And if they're going to commit to playing young players coming through their academy more, well, then go into League One, and then your plan is to develop those players and sell them on. You can do that from League One just like you could out of the championship, I would think. So it makes sense to me. And I think it makes sense where I could see things progressing to. Because they mentioned it in their press release. The Richmond connection again, Greenville, Tormenta, Chattanooga. That's 4 right there. If Charlotte goes, if Charleston goes, if Asheville moves up into League One, which we could absolutely see with the progression that they've had. If they can ride through the pandemic, make that progression in a year or two, and move up to League One. That's another one. You've got so many markets in this area that could fit in League One. Get ahead of the curve. Get ahead of the curve. If you need to save a little bit of money and this helps you do it, that's the realities of the world we're in right now. But I think in the long term it makes sense. And especially if, which Jake Edwards, the head of USL, has said, he hasn't backed off of it. There could be promotion relegation in USL at some point down the road. If you can win your way back into the championship down the road when that would actually matter, fine. But without promotion relegation, I don't think it really matters if you're in championship or League One, to be honest. I don't think it matters to the fans. And that's the number one thing here, is you're trying to build a brand in your community. Are they going to care about D2 versus D3? I don't think they do. I think they care about local rivalries. I think they care about what the club is doing in the community. I think those are the important things. We'll get hung up on it from the outside. Well, they're a Division III team versus a Division II team. I don't think the gap is that huge, and I don't think the local fans care. I've said this about Charleston for a long time, because they did it in the past. When they were in the old A-League, this is when APSL merged with USL back in the late 90s, and they were in the second division. And Charleston went from a league that had them playing in the USL Pro League, you know, like South Carolina Shamrocks and teams locally, and you didn't travel very far at all. When they went from that to playing Seattle and going to Orange County and going to to play teams on the West Coast. Like, why? Did it help their brand? No, not really. I mean, look at their attendance over the years. Look at their attendance versus being in the second tier USL Pro League versus when they went back into the second division in USL. Did their attendance jump when they moved up a level on paper? It didn't. It didn't matter. So if it doesn't affect your local market and your perception, and it increases your costs, why do it? Now, League One, as Byrne said, talking about things from a travel standpoint, they need to get where they're trying to get as fast as possible and do it regionally. I think the original idea, correct me if I'm wrong, John, is where the championship is divided into two with conferences, and they don't play cross-conference generally in normal years. League One wanted to be divided into further subdivisions of regional play. It's going to take time to get there, but that was the idea, right?
Yeah, that was the end goal, where you would have, Northeast, Southeast, Midwest, West, however you want to break it down, and it would be that much more segmented, where you would have a situation like we see developing with the rivalries with Richmond and Greenville and Tormenta and Chattanooga, where you have that hyper-regionalization to cut down on travel costs, to have the rivalries that are right there in your footprint, where you're not jumping out and you're going to play an FC Tucson, as an example.
Yeah, and that's one where I think they were trying to build something and hasn't happened as fast as they would like. And they need to get more West Coast representation. That's been a challenge for USL for decades. It's not new. The West Coast, and it's the same in NPSL, it's the same in League Two, it's the same in anything. It's more spread out. The travel costs, from my experience being in NPSL when I was, our travel costs in the old South region were some of the lowest in the league because of the way we structured it. Whereas the teams up in the Northeast, as they spread out more and kept adding teams because they just kept adding teams, or teams out west, they were having to fly to games, and in an amateur league, which is craziness. There's no point unless that's all you can do. Here, and this is going back to a decade ago, you had Atlanta, you had generally a couple teams in the Atlanta area. You'd have Chattanooga, you'd have Knoxville, you'd have Birmingham or Huntsville. Greenville was there for a while back in that time. You'd have all drivable games. Okay, when you're talking about the pro level, yeah, you can fly. Yeah, you can bus. You're not doing what we did, where you're renting 7-passenger vans and 3 coaches are driving, and that's how you're getting to games. You can actually rent a bus. You can do these things. But I just don't think it makes a difference. I don't think you gain more by playing, a team that is in another time zone. I just don't think it really matters. We'll see. All right, we got a little bit of news I am hearing, and let's get to it. Just a second. If I could find my buttons properly, we will hit it with the big fancy one.
Oh.
Gabriel Heinze's coaching staff is announced by Atlanta United. 5 members to Gabriel Heinze's staff for the 2021 season. Assistant coaches Mariano Todetli, Nicolas Pavlovich, Pedro Mateo Levias. Those are your assistant coaches. Fitness coach Javier Villamitiana and video analyst Diego Navone. Current goalkeeper coach Liam Curran will continue. Stephen Glass and Henry Apalou are moving back to Atlanta United 2, where they were before. Tony Annan moves back to his role, which he was continuing anyway, as the academy director. And Rob Valentino will continue on as a staff coach with the club with a focus on player development. That's an interesting role. I like that for Valentino because he's not tied to one team, but he's focused on that player development side. So a little bit about each of them. Toetli has been an assistant with Heinze since his first head coaching job at Godoy Cruz, so going all the way back to the very, very beginning. Former striker, played in Portugal, Spain, and Argentina as a player. He played for Sevilla, scored 133 goals in his career. Pavlovic is a former striker as well, was on the Vélez staff with Heinze. Started his playing career at Newell's Old Boys in 98, played in Russia, played in Germany, played in Mexico, returned to South America to end his playing career. Leivas will serve as an assistant coach, aiding in translation, technical director at Sporting Global LLC, an official partner of the FC Barcelona Academy in the United States. Crazy, we were talking about that earlier. Curran continues as the goalkeeper coach, second season with the first team, sixth year at the club. Fitness coach, has worked with Heinze at each of his previous clubs, beginning with the Godoy Cruz stint. Also worked as a fitness coach for the Argentine national team. And Navone follows Heinze to Atlanta, was the video analyst at Vélez, also part of that original staff at Godoy Cruz and Argentinos Juniors. So you got a lot of guys who have been with Heinze for a long time. But he's also made a couple of additions. And I think that's what's interesting here. Leivas, the assistant who's going to help with translation, is new, and he's been in the United States. But he comes from a club, from the FC Barcelona Academy side where we talked about curriculum, right? There's a lot of similarities here. So it's not just that he can translate, it's that he can be a coach and translate. Yeah. That's a very different thing. You need that in these situations. He understands it and can translate. That's big. He gets the feel, right? It's not just translating words. No major surprises. No big names. No Gago. No Mascherano. Those things were already squashed by Heinze and his media availability. So a lot of people that most people don't know, and that is completely okay. We're talking about assistant managers here. There's no good or bad here about that. Yeah. But you've got a lot of guys that he is very, very comfortable with, and obviously has worked well with. And the couple little additions, a couple little changes make sense. The guy on translation comes in, Leivas, makes a lot of sense. Valentino continuing with the club in player development, so kind of being able to kind of cross between different aspects of the club, that's a very important role. I don't think many MLS teams have that. And your Atlanta United 2 staff is back in place with Stephen Glass and Henry Apollo and Tony Annan as the academy director. You're moving forward, and all the pieces are in place now.
Yeah, and your point about Leivas, there to me, there's a difference between being someone who's there to translate and being someone who's there to both translate and coach, because you're understanding the message that the head coach is trying to get across. You can convey that in addition to everything else that you need to do. So having Leivas there to do that, I think is definitely big when you're in this kind of a situation where you have someone who understands the meaning of what you're trying to get out, instead of just trying to sit there and say, okay, here are the words that the coach is saying, here's what he's trying to do in addition to that.
Mm-hmm. It's very, very important. So that's your staff, and they will hopefully all be coming in soon. I think these, going back to that media availability, I don't think anything's changed from that. So I would assume that visas and everything have been being worked on for a while and should be progressing. And maybe everybody's here this week. I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see what that looks like. A couple things on Twitter. I did not intentionally make a Swingers reference with the West Coast representation comment. That was random, but yeah. I'll take it. Tom Russo, thank you. And Rich Ransom is trying to start some drama. I did not say ProRel doesn't matter. I said the division doesn't matter if you don't have ProRel. Did I say ProRel doesn't matter? Did I actually say it in that way?
I don't think so.
Maybe I did. I will clarify. I'm talking about in the United States where you don't have ProRel. I don't care if you're in the second or your third division. It doesn't matter. It matters about who you're playing. It matters about your cost. Don't go bankrupt to be in the second division because you're going to travel across the country. That's dumb. Be in the third division and spend less and actually survive, because sustainability is the number one thing. And it's the same in ProRel, to be honest, to be perfectly honest. Sustainability is the key here. Teams coming and going is bad. And that
Yes.
should not be acceptable at any level, and people should not be advocating for that. You need sustainability. That's why right now you don't have pro-rel between Championship and League One. It's a lot closer in level than Championship to MLS, but it's not the same yet. You can get there because they can be comparable, and then you can have promotion relegation between the USL divisions. That's fine. But right now, for North Carolina to drop down to League One, I think it's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. I think it's a very good thing.
Question.
I think it increases their sustainability.
Yeah, Taka says, this is why we need hybrid pro-rel with a winking emoji to create a purposeful difference between USL, League One, and the Championship.
If you can get people to understand a hybrid pro-rel, go for it, Tafka. I know you've written opuses. I know. I think hybrid situations are trying to fix something that is maybe making it more complicated. That's my opinion. I'm sorry. I think you'll get to a pro-rel between the Championship and League One. USL will have a pro-rel in a decade. Yeah. There's my other hot take of the day. Yeah. In 10 years, I think you can have that because the levels will be fleshed out fully, and then teams can survive going up and down between those two. It's got to be about teams surviving, more so than the romanticism of you can go all the way up if you start a pub team and you can win MLS. That doesn't happen. It just doesn't. I'm sorry. It hasn't. It doesn't. It won't. And too many teams will go broke and too many people will lose jobs because of that. You need to be smart about it and have the right things in place for sustainability. That's got to be the goal.
Yeah. Bartimus Prime is in this morning, and he said North Carolina FC averaged just above 4,500 fans per game in 2018 and 2019. Those aren't bad numbers, but not enough to make me think the attendance will fall drastically by moving to League One. I hope it's a one-year decision, but we'll see.
No, I don't even hope it's a one-year decision. I hope they just make the right decision. I don't. It doesn't matter. I really don't think it matters between the two. If they win the League One championship, I don't think people are going to think it's lesser. I think they'll be happy about a championship. I don't think people will not buy a ticket if Greenville's come into town versus, St. Louis or versus Louisville. Or I don't think it'll make a difference. I really don't. I think there's more benefit than harm here. So we on the outside get hung up on the level number. In the market, I don't think it matters if you're not in if you're not in MLS. I don't think it matters in this country as much as people think it does. It's all got to be about the dollars and cents. It just has to be.
Do you think people in Greenville care what division they're in currently, considering they had a championship last season?
I don't think they look at the championship as less than because it's not the USL championship level trophy. I don't think they look at it as, oh, well, I don't really care. I think they were pretty excited. Yeah. So Thomas Jewin with a really good example of this, or a really good explanation of this. Pro-rel is a good solution for a glut of existing well-supported teams. It is not a good solution for creating such teams. Totally accurate.
Yeah.
Just because some countries, not all, but some, and most do, just because they use it doesn't mean that the U.S. should use it just because. Use it if it makes sense. And I think it will eventually make sense in USL between their second and third divisions. I could see it making sense for MLS, and this is probably further down the road, if they continue to expand, which they've said they're not. If they decide to go down that road and create a second division, I could see them do their version of it. I don't know if you have it across a full pyramid. Anytime that we'll see. And I don't think that makes it bad. I don't know if that happens here. The game's developed in a different way, and there's reasons for that. You don't just pick something that some other country does just because they do it. It has to make sense here. And we've seen over the last decade, maybe we'll go back 15 years, since about 2005, 2006, we have seen consistent, steady growth, I think, at all levels of the game. And that's including the missteps that the second NASL made. Because they made a bunch. I mean, they made a ton. And they didn't help the game grow in this country. And the one thing they helped with is they demanded higher standards for second division teams, which ultimately saw their league go away, but it raised the bar for what second division teams should be in this country. That's good. That's their lasting legacy. But outside of that, you've got a bigger USL than you've ever seen. You now have 2 professional divisions back in USL and not at a essentially 3rd and 4th division level. It is at a true second division level, higher than we've ever seen in this country before, and a 3rd division level. You have the growth lower than that, which you need across all kinds of different leagues, because it's not a one-size-fits-all model. With UPSL, with NPSL, with USL League 2, there's different levels for different teams and different approaches, and you need that. You're seeing the growth at the academy level. You're seeing, as we talked about earlier, these players being produced and developed in better ways than ever before. The game's in a really healthy place, and that's happened without Pro Rel. That's okay. Do we get to a point where we have that glut of teams that are all stable, that can handle going up and down? Maybe. Maybe not. It's okay either way. You need to make the right decisions for the good of the game, not to be like somebody else. And that's what I hope this country decides to continue to do in soccer. Do what's right for the game. Don't do something because England does it.
Yeah. Rich Ransom is back in, and he says, North Carolina FC moving feels like a bad demotion. They spent 3 years pushing hard for MLS.
Thoroughly disagree. The MLS thing, they were pretty much out of that anyway, right? I mean, MLS has said they're not going to expand anymore. So if that's the case, then why continue to spend at a second division level if it's not making sense for you? You know, the second division level is sold, like Chris or like Bart pointed out, 4,500 tickets a game last year. Or what's that, 19, I'm assuming? Not 20? I don't know. It doesn't matter.
Both.
Okay, across both. Okay, 4,500 fans per game. That's what the second division was selling. That's not really enough. If that's enough at the third division level, okay, then move to the third division level. I don't think it's a bad demotion because, again, it's on paper. The demotion's on paper. You're not actually moving up or down, so what does it matter what the number on a piece of paper says?
And the team's not going away either.
Right. I mean, if it's we can't spend enough to continue to be sustainable at the second division level, but we can't look bad by going to a level below, so we're just going to shut the doors. That's worse. Like, if this is the move they had to make, then this is the move they had to make. But it's on paper. It's a paper move. It doesn't really. I don't think it changes anything.
No, I mean, you're developing a $2.2 billion facility. That's a part of your current infrastructure plan. You're spending less with your membership fee from $225,000 to $100,000, so you're saving money there in your operations. But you're still here. You're still active as a part of the process in building the sport in your footprint and in your division. You're not going away. You're just moving someplace else. And I think that to me is what matters here. You're still here. You didn't go away. You still get to continue to build with all the plans that you have with infrastructure, all the future that you have, all the academy ideas that you have, having all of the younger players continuing to grow and growing the game that way. You didn't go away. You just shifted someplace else. And that to me is the bigger picture.
It's a paper move. I'm fine with it if North Carolina continues to do what they're doing. They're not pulling out of building a stadium because they moved a number down on paper. They're still going to try to build their stadium. They're still working on all the big aspects of the club. It's a big picture move. And I do think down the road, like USL League One is going to be a good fit for a lot of teams in this region because of the proximity. We'll see how that fleshes out. I guess there was some confusion on, because Heinze added an assistant coach that will work in translation, that this could be affecting Justin's role with the team. I didn't even consider that, but Doug tweeted out, Doug Robertson from the AJC, when I saw Heinze has added a translator to staff, I was slightly worried about Justin. I was told that he is still on staff and will continue in the role that he served under Tata, so that's good news. Justin's on the communication side of things.
Yeah.
I didn't think that was a confusing point, but I guess. This is an assistant coach coming in who is coming in to help in training sessions. Like those are two different jobs. So Justin's fine. Relax. It's all good. Justin's okay. It's like under Tata, Justin wasn't on the training pitch. That wasn't his job. He works in communications. So that's why when we were talking about that role, it's good that it is a coach who is translating here, because it's not just translating words from a communication standpoint. It's translating ideas. It's translating theory. It's translating philosophy, which is not always just a straight word-for-word translation. So it's completely different job aspects, completely different job responsibilities.
Nathan Pugh, last thing on the Twitters for the moment, with a public service question. He's asking, it's a bit random, but how does one say Celtic in Arabic using the hashtag translations down here?
You say it as disaster is what you say. Celtic's a mess, and Jarrett's a mess. Burn says Greg Garza did that for Tata. Not all the time. Rodrigo Rios did that for a while for Tata Martino as well, from the U19 team with the academy. Others did too. I know some players did as well at different points. But you ideally want a staff member, a technical staff member, to do that, not a player to be doing that. So you've covered all the bases with your assistant coaching staff. It makes a lot of sense. The Celtic situation, if you haven't seen it, they went to Dubai. Is that correct?
That is correct.
They went to Dubai to, I guess, to train and whatever, a holiday. I know some women's Super League teams did this as well, and they've got issues coming out of it. Christopher Julian tested positive. 13 players and 3 members of staff, including Neil Lennon and John Kennedy from the coaching staff, have been told to self-isolate. They are playing tonight against Hibs. Celtic put out a horrible, horrible statement, and it's really embarrassing, but it says a lot about where the club is. And I've said this to Jarrett, so I don't feel like I have to apologize to him like I apologize when I go off on Newcastle to Alex Pacine. And Jarrett says that I'm being nice about calling it a mess. They put out an awful statement this morning. They included this line in their statement, trying to justify their actions. The reality is that a case could well have occurred had the team remained in Scotland, as other cases have done in Scottish football and across UK sport in the past week. The reality is also, according to some of the players that were involved in this trip, that the protocols were lax. And the idea that, yes, a positive case could have occurred if they had stayed at home, for sure. In actuality, if you're taking a team on a trip like this, shouldn't they be more under control than they would be at home?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of the same? Because you've got them in a training camp environment, allegedly. I'm sure Neil Lennon and Scott Brown sitting by the pool, hanging out, chatting, was part of that. I'm sure that was all part of it.
Yeah.
It's embarrassing that they still did the trip with the uptick in cases. It's embarrassing that they're now trying to justify it. Celtic has a real serious problem with their arrogance right now, and they will not get things right until they realize that they're not as hot as they think they are these days.
Yeah.
And until they get that, they're going to have problems and they're going to have these issues. But the arrogance is what is maddening about this. Also, alongside this right now going on in Scotland, everything below the second division level has been suspended for 3 weeks due to the rising number of coronavirus cases. That's SPFL League 1 and League 2, the Scottish Women's Premier League 1 and 2, and everything below that, junior leagues, etc. The second-tier championship will continue, provided it starts weekly PCR testing for players and staff, which they have not been doing. Regular testing's been in place for Scottish Premiership clubs since the season started. I think they're doing once a week. No Scottish Cup matches. Those have been suspended. Any ties scheduled to be played before February 1st will be rescheduled. This will be reviewed on a rolling basis. So alongside of that going on, Celtic thought it was a good idea to go to Dubai and have lax protocols and then try to justify it when they come back after somebody tests positive. just shut up, Celtic. Seriously, just shut up at this point. Stop trying to justify Neil Lennon's great and all this is wonderful when they've been awful this season at their standard. Stop trying to justify taking this trip at this time right now. Stop trying to justify everything like you're the big boys. You're about to lose the league title. You are not the club that you used to be at this moment. And until you realize that, it's going to get worse. And that's just the thing. That's just where it's at. I mean, they still have so much more money than Aberdeen and everybody else that they can maybe ride through it with this arrogance. But in the long term, they won't be what they could be because the jump they were looking at before was getting into the Champions League, actually knocking off some people, and maybe making a Europa League run and those kinds of things. Right now, I mean, that ain't happening. That ain't happening with Neil Lennon. That ain't happening with this team. That ain't happening with this arrogant stance. So we'll see. Sorry, Jarrett, to thrash your team and all, but it's bad. It's really, really bad. It's really, really frustrating.
Yeah. From The Guardian, Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon had questioned the purpose of Celtic's trip and whether they were following social distancing rules after seeing photos from their Dubai base. Kennedy, the Celtic assistant manager, admitted on Saturday that there had been some minor slip-ups, but that a photo had maybe painted a false picture. Elite sports teams who go to foreign training camps are exempt from quarantine rules. Scotland's national clinical director, Jason Leach, said on BBC Radio, professional sport people can go on winter training camps. That is allowed. They're not allowed to just go on a holiday like the rest of us aren't. That exemption, if they stay within their bubble, means they don't have to quarantine when they come back. UAE on Friday had over 5,000 new cases, nearly double the Scottish number. There's a lot of COVID in Dubai. The club, when they're in Dubai, have to follow the rules. They have to distance. They're allowed to be there, to be clear, end quote.
We'll see. It didn't look good. And for a club that's got some issues with these sorts of things, they should be looking at these perception issues as well. Some other things coming out of FA Cup from the weekend. A lot of fun, different things that happened. We talked about Chorley. Chorley's groundsman, Ben Kay, he confirmed on Twitter that he has been invited to be part of the FA Cup final grounds team at Wembley, following his efforts to make sure that game against Derby happened. Reportedly, he slept on the pitch to make sure that they would be able to keep it from freezing. And got the game in, and they won, and they advanced. So he's been invited to be part of the FA Cup final grounds team. That's awesome. That's very, very cool. Cool. Did you expect Jose Mourinho to not fire off some choice comments about things? That's kind of what he does, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
So remember the whole story coming into the game against Marine AFC, and we'll talk about them in just a second. You had Everton and Liverpool helping them out with training facilities, with scouting, tips, coaching tips, things like that. Mourinho, after the game, said, Ancelotti and Klopp gave Marine tips, you say? Well, I didn't want to say, but I told Crawley how to beat Leeds. Sounds like something Mourinho would say. The whole situation with Marine AFC, very, very cool. They sold more than £300,000 of virtual tickets against Tottenham, and according to reports, they have been saved for the next 20 years at the level they're at with all the money they brought in from this. So that's very, very cool. If we can't get the traditional magic of the cup, this is a pretty cool sidebar in the magic of the cup to have stuff like this happen. Anything else you want to touch on before we go?
Couple of things. King Kazu in Japan signed another 1-year deal, signed a contract extension, so he will be playing after the age of 54 for Yokohama FC. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Okay.
And the Phil Neville situation, I guess, with Inter Miami.
Yeah, sounds like it's 24 hours away from being done. He was supposed to manage the Team GB in the Olympics, and it sounds like he is getting out of that gig, and he will be headed to Inter Miami. David Beckham is back in Miami, according to his Instagram, so it seems like things are starting to come into place. Matt Lawton at the time said he's a step closer to that. The FA is due to announce in the next 24 hours that he will be standing down as the England women head coach. He was going to take Team GB to the Olympics, and that was going to extend his deal with the FA, but there had been talk about him leaving before that anyway. So it's not a shock, but yeah, he would leave to go to this because he was already going to leave. And Serena Wigman, the Dutch national team coach, isn't going to take over England until after the Olympics because she's got the Netherlands in the Olympics. So she's going to finish that out, at least right now, unless they come to some financial arrangements to change that. We'll have to see.
And I'm trying to quickly check and see if anyone else has popped in on Twitter. No, sir. We are caught up on Twitters as well.
Okay, final thing. The quote of the weekend. It beats Jose's. Gennaro Gattuso talking about Napoli. Napoli want to always be beautiful, but sometimes being a bit ugly is a good thing. You can't always be Brad Pitt with blonde hair and blue eyes. Sometimes you have to be a bit ugly, like me. I want Gennaro Gattuso to have a talk show and just sit and tell us stories like for 30 minutes a day. I'd be so happy with that. It'd be amazing. We will be back with Soccer Over There tonight, 7 o'clock. Jarrett might be yelling about Celtic. We'll see how they do against Hibs with 13 players missing. Nick might be yelling about Milan or anything else going on in Italy. John, are you going to be yelling?
I don't know if I'll be yelling. It might be more of a mellow Monday for me. I might just be more of the point guard or points for the show, and maybe poking Jarrett and Nick to get them to yell a little more.
Okay, fair enough. We'll see if my voice allows me to yell or speak or anything like that. We'll see how that goes as the day goes on. Thanks for hanging out. Appreciate it. If you are a subscriber and you are not in the Discord yet, please send me a message. We're trying to get Joe Bost into the Discord. He said he might need a little help from you, John. So we'll have to see how that goes.
Wow.
I know. The Discord's different for some folks. So we'll trying to get Joe in there. It was really good over the weekend with a lot of further information on the Moises Caicedo stuff, with a lot of talk about some of the different games. I love that the Watch Along channel is becoming kind of a free-for-all. Whatever you're watching, whatever's going on. And then somebody says, oh, you're watching this game. Cool, I'll flip over there and I'll watch this. And that's awesome. That's what I was hoping it would turn out to be. So thanks to a bunch of people re-upped on their subscriptions on Twitch this morning. Thank you. If you're not in the Discord yet, if you don't really know Discord, join us. Come in. It's a chance for us to share stuff that happens outside of the shows, and just other sidebar stuff that might not be big enough to get into the show, but it is worth a discussion and things like that. So thanks to everybody who subscribes and watches and shares this and tells others about it. We don't get to do this stuff without y'all. Getting closer to the next MLS season, getting closer to the next USL season, getting closer to academy games starting back up. Lots of different things that we'll be getting deeper and deeper into as we go. And we're very, very thankful to all of you who spend your time with us on a daily basis. We'll be back for Soccer Over There at 7 o'clock. Until then, mucha plata, y'all.
Mucha plata, y'all.